Welcome back to the My First Rodeo podcast, the show that asks really cool, interesting, and famous people about the various firsts on their paths to success. It's good to be with you, My First Rodeo listeners, MFers, if you will. That coming from a guy who's gone through his whole life, Mike Freed, as an MF. So just try that out for size, MFers. I don't know if that works or not. Not sure if people want to identify themselves as such. Today is no exception. Today we have a great guest, Ezra Freeman, Emily Freeman, if you wish. But Ezra Freeman is her name, her famous name. She is one of the stars of The Real Love Boat, which is a sequel and a reality show homage to the original Love Boat that some of us grew up with. And she's so much more than that. She is a really interesting influencer. She's a person who has an incredible story of adoption out of the country of Georgia, not Atlanta, Georgia, but the country of Georgia, and finding her birth family and reuniting with them. An experience that was emanated from a whole bunch of different things that were put in place, including a 23andMe study, but also being, I'll say, trapped, if you want to call it that, on a Princess cruise ship for 67 days in the middle of the pandemic, when she had a chance to reflect and think about a lot of things. And I say trapped, and I joke because they treated her very, very well, so well that she TikToked about it and posted on social media and became a brand ambassador for Princess Cruises. So just exciting, the things that have happened in her life. And she just does an amazing, energetic job of talking about it in a way that I think you'll find engaging and interesting. I've gotten a lot of feedback on the Mohamedou Al-Slahi interview, which I thought was, I don't want to say compelling like I did anything great. His story is compelling, and the facts and the experiences he went through. And I got a lot of comments and messages from people, some wanting to know, is he really innocent? And for them, I responded and would respond to you to go Google the story, read the diary, and you can watch the movie, but that's a Hollywood portrayal. But it certainly seems pretty clear from the experiences that he had, including, basically being fully exonerated and then freed, that he had nothing to do with the things that he was accused of, and was tortured as a result of. But I think a really great conversation with Mohamedou Al-Slahi. I want to tell you a little bit about Freed to Run. You can check it out at the hashtag at Freed to Run, FREEDTORUN, or www.freedtorun.com. And it is a charity run that we've done every year now this will be the 8th year. Started off as 6 marathons in 6 days to raise money for indigent pediatric patients, has evolved into a second event, which is a 24-hour run, November 17th and 18th, to raise money for what we're calling Shelter for Elders, which is helping indigent homeless population. Has a matching fund from the Dolores Barr Weaver Legacy Fund, and the pediatric patients endowment was matched by the Baptist Health Foundation. And the monies raised through those events go into endowments, and only the interest is used to fund these programs in perpetuity. So I hope you'll check it out. I hope you'll learn more and perhaps invest in, sponsor, donate, or even come out and run on November 17th and 18th in Freed to Run. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. This is me talking to Ezra Freeman. Ezra, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm great. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, it's fun to be with you. What the heck have you been up to? It sounds like you're running 1,000,000 miles a minute.
I literally am, especially this week. So this is the perfect time for us to be talking. So I just got back to New York City, where I live. I just got back yesterday and hosted a Tbilisi Soba Festival. I'm from the country, Georgia, and yesterday was a celebration of Tbilisi independence, and we celebrated in Brooklyn, New York. So I hosted that festival. I was the English-speaking host, but I was coming from Maryland, where I was only there for 30 hours for my cousin's wedding. And where I was before that was I was in San Diego because I am a brand ambassador, sort of influencer for Princess Cruises. And I was in San Diego for just 36 hours, talking about some of the new and exciting things that are happening with Princess Cruises, the newest ship, the Sun Princess, which is coming out next year. So I went from New York to San Diego for 2 nights, to Maryland for 2 nights. And then tonight will be my second night back in New York. And this is just perfect that we're talking about all of this, because all of these amazing things that are happening in my life are still relatively new.
Yeah.
So I feel like every day I have a first rodeo.
Yeah, that's exciting. It sounds like, I mean, I've talked to you before and I've followed your career a bit, and it seems like you're always moving a million miles a minute. I think that's what makes following you, not just for me, but for the people that you influence or try to influence or have influenced, want to follow you. If you were boring or sitting in one place, it wouldn't be that exciting, would it?
I mean, probably not. Though some people really do make influencing careers out of what seems to be nothing. And I always say that anybody can be an influencer or a content creator if they want to. It just like depends. I think it's all about your outlook. Like for me, I'm so high energy and I get so excited so easily that for the longest time, even before like growing up, I never knew that being a content creator was a career that someone could have because it didn't exist. But I know that I would have wanted to be one because I found every day, even as a kid, when I wasn't doing anything other than going to school, I was like, this is amazing. So I think it's just like that main character syndrome that I just always had.
That's interesting.
To film everything.
Well, I think I know what you mean by that, and it resonates with something I've always thought. But tell me what you mean by what was the phrase you used? The
main character
syndrome, please. Yeah, elaborate on that.
It's like a social media term where it's like, oh, she's the main character or you're the main character. And it's like, of course, we all are the protagonist in our own stories.
Or the antagonist in my case, but...
The antagonist?
I tend to be the antagonist in my own life, but that's another story.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, but even so, you say that, and yet... You know, you're running your own podcast, you're doing all these things. It's amazing. But I do think as a podcast host, you're a connector. So like maybe you're finding protagonists and pulling all the good things out.
You're taking me too literally. I was being self-deprecating.
Okay, perfect.
I'm both the protagonist and the antagonist in my own life. You live long enough and you can be your own worst enemy, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I'm only 27. We'll see where I'm at in a few years. But with that, so I honestly think like just my outlook on life, it's always been pretty consistently very positive and very like grateful. And luckily for me, as I've grown up, I think that's just attracted some really wonderful things and opportunities into my life. So this is kind of what I mean by main character syndrome. I had a few things going for me that kind of added to this. I grew up an only child. So
or so you thought, right? Or so you thought.
So I thought. Yeah, exactly. But that's why I say I grew up an only child. I am now the youngest sibling of 4, but they entered my life much later. And I grew up, just so close with my parents, and I had so much unconditional love from them and still do, which is literally the key to every single good thing that's happened in my life. Like, I feel like I want to be a parent so badly just so that I can give my children what my parents have given me, because they did it so right. Like they should write every parenting book. They should do everything because I just love them so much. And I'm so aware every day of the way that they raised me being, the reason why I have everything I have now.
Wow. Well, let's dig into that because as a parent myself, I have 5 kids. I'm not... obviously, any parent would love to hear their child say that about them. I don't think it would be true in my case. I mean, certainly not everything that my kids have is attributable to me. And I'm not even sure I've been a great parent. I know I've loved them unconditionally, and that's a great start. Tell me what is it that you if you had to put it into words, what is it that your parents have done and probably continue to do that has made you want to attribute all of your success to them?
Totally. So it's really, I think It's the unconditional love. And also, my parents have always given me unconditional respect, even as a child. Like, I mean, being an only child, I've heard this before that only children grow up quicker than, people who might have grown up with siblings. But it's because I would hang out with my parents and their friends, and they would speak to me. They would meet me where I was with my intelligence, but they would speak to me like an adult. We would always talk about important things. And I just think that really grew my self esteem in a way, like it accelerated it. I was always so confident. And it's so funny. My mom and I are always laughing now because I always grew up singing and doing theater. And I was always very confident in my abilities. And so was my mother. And now we watch videos of me when I was younger and I was terrible. And we're like, why did we think I was so good?
But does your mom acknowledge that you were not that good? Because what I've found is that parents say you're the best ever. And they truly believe in that moment that you are.
Exactly. She truly believed. But now looking back, she's like, I honestly thought you were great, but you were kind of awful.
A little pitchy.
Yeah. Seriously, like to the extreme. But like with that, and also, so I'm adopted. And I think like the fact that my parents were always so open with me about being adopted, it kind of made me feel more special in a way. It was never an insecurity. I was like, wow, I am so lucky that I was chosen to have this life and that I was like handpicked by my parents and, by this adoption agency, and just the way that God worked in my life. Like I was meant to literally have this life because so many things could have gone so differently for me. Like I'm from the country, Georgia, which is a third world country. And if I was raised in Georgia, I have to believe that my life would just be completely different. And now that I know my siblings, I know for a fact that it would have been completely different because the way that they were raised is exactly how I was raised. And, it's really interesting because this like positivity and energy that I have, I did actually find that my siblings also do have this. So I give all the credit to my parents, but I guess, some of it's got to go to my birth parents too, because my siblings are kind of the same way.
That's a great question.
That being said,
no, go ahead.
Right? It's this nature versus nurture thing. It's so fascinating.
That's where I was going.
Yeah. Every time I talk to my siblings, we kind of discover more and more of some of our just like innate similarities. And it's really fun to get to meet someone when you're 25. I was when we first met, and just realize some of these little quirks. Like when if I'm like overwhelmed or something, I just always go, oh, and so does every single one of my siblings and my birth father.
And listener, and so since you can't see Ezra, she just did sort of, I'm not saying you're a horse face, but that yes. expression, do horses do expressions, that movement that horses do when they're tired of you being on their back is what Ezra just did. So apparently you and your siblings, your birth siblings share that, huh?
Yeah. And my birth father, and I did it and I didn't think anything of it because it's a normal thing. It's probably a habit I didn't even realize that I had. And then when I did it for the first time, surrounded by my family, everyone was like, oh my goodness, she just did the thing.
That's funny. Well,
they have attributed to be a family thing. Yeah.
I mean, Georgia, the country of Georgia is such an important part of what I want to talk to you about, and your story and your adoption story. It's not just something that happened. It's continuing to happen. So I want to get to that, but maybe it'd be useful for our listeners. I'm sure it'd be useful for me. Tell us a little bit about Georgia, the country, the culture, and some of those things that apparently are in your DNA.
Oh, I would be honored. I could talk about this literally all day. So, because it's new to me, it feels. So I was born in Georgia, but then did not go back again until 2021. So Georgia is a country of 4 million people in Eastern Europe. It's on the Black Sea and it borders Russia. So a lot of people, most Americans, think of Georgia as like part of the former Soviet Union, which is accurate. It was a part of the Soviet Union. But now it is its own independent country. Russia does occupy 20% of Georgia, which is very unfortunate. But 20% of the country is occupied by Russia. The rest of it has this just deeply rich, ancient culture that they're holding on to and we're so proud of. I mean, now I could say we, like, because I am now so proud to be Georgian. And Georgia, in this country of only 4 million people, there are 3 languages spoken. So everyone speaks Georgian, and Georgian is only spoken in Georgia. And we have our own alphabet that is only used in Georgia.
Wow.
And it's kind of like the prized jewel of the country. The fact that, you know, through all of these wars and all of this just, you know, craziness with the Soviet Union and then Russia invading, the culture has lasted. The language has lasted. It's been preserved. The alphabet has stood the test of time, and it's just wonderful. It's amazing. And I'm so honored to be on this journey now of learning to speak Georgian. The first thing I started with was the alphabet, but Georgian dance, Georgian food, all of it. And, you know, something I noticed recently is in my experience in New York. So there are over 200,000 Georgians living in New York City right now, which for a country whose written population is 4 million is a huge percentage of that
is
population.
Really huge. Yeah, absolutely.
It is wild. And a lot of the Georgians who are in New York came recently. There were only 100,000 2 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
So it has doubled.
Wow.
Just in the
So
last
that's a
2
post-pandemic 300% growth.
Absolutely. It is
crazy.
Wild. And I've been very involved with a Georgian cultural center called Pesvebi here in New York. And it's just incredible to me. So yesterday, the festival that I mentioned earlier, it was a Georgian cultural festival. The turnout was absolutely wild. I mean, there were over 1,000 people easily. And this was just for, you know, a Sunday festival in Brooklyn, New York.
Wow.
Over 1,000 people for a country that the population is 4 million, and half of the United States doesn't even realize that there is a country, Georgia, which, you know, is so unfortunate. But especially me, like being so Americanized, when I tell people I'm from Georgia, they're assuming I mean Atlanta.
Yeah,
and I'm
sure.
like, no, Tbilisi. Like,
yeah, why is it? And you're helping me ask dumb questions, so thank you for that opportunity.
Please ask at all.
Why is it that Georgia is one of the sort of lesser known to us ugly Americans in terms of Eastern European countries or former USSR portions of the USSR? Why is it that a lot of us know less about Georgia than we do say about, well, now obviously Ukraine for not all the good reasons?
Right. Right. I think honestly, the name has a lot to do with it. I think people have probably heard more about Georgia than they realize. But when you hear it and you're not really maybe half listening, you might just assume it's the state.
Wow, we really are dumb.
No, not at all. It's so funny. It's honestly wild to me how far I can get in a conversation with someone about Georgia before they realize I'm talking about the, you know.
Well, that's when you're talking to men, probably. When you're talking to guys, they're like, yeah, oh, she's talking. I didn't realize she was talking. Georgia.
Oh my gosh. I hope not. But like I could say I'm from Georgia and then I could say, no, the country. And they could still think that I mean just like the sticks of the country. Like,
oh, yeah.
Aw,
how do you spell it out from at that point? Or you just end the conversation?
Well, sometimes I don't even realize. Like, I think that they know what they're talking about and they know what I'm talking about. And the country, it could just go so far. Yeah. But it's interesting. In Georgia, we don't call it Georgia. We call it Sakartvelo. And there has been a lot of talk about changing the global name to Sakartvelo, which I think would be amazing because, I mean, as much as I love that, you know, Georgia is Georgia, I think calling it Sakartvelo globally would just be amazing and putting it on the map. And lately, I think Georgian wines have become very popular.
Okay.
So that could be a window into Americans.
That's the way to reach us through our alcoholism. Good call.
Yeah.
So
it's a good way to reach the people.
Is Georgia just, is it an Americanized name or is it an alternative name of the one that you spoke?
It's an alternative. It's not just used in the U.S. It's, you know, it's the globally recognized name for the country is Georgia. So why Georgians call it Sakartvelo? No, that is something that I still have yet to learn. So as much as I'm so passionate about the culture and about this country and how my life has just become infinitely richer learning about it, I am still only about 2 years into my journey.
Yeah, no, I get it. That comes after the alphabet. Obviously, you can't do entomology until you know the alphabet. So let's talk about your adoption story. You've alluded to it. You obviously were adopted. You probably don't remember a time where you didn't know you were adopted. You didn't see that as lesser than. That was actually an add to. Yet and at some point, raised by two wonderful people that adopted you. They are your parents. You decided, or circumstances happened where you wanted to find out who your birth parents were, and more about that, right?
More or less, actually. Well, this will be good. I'll start at the beginning. So I'll start at the very first rodeo, which was not my own, if you will.
Sure.
So my cousin David, there's three of us who grew up as cousins, and we're really family friends, and we're all adopted. And my cousin Alexa is adopted from Ukraine. She is actually the one who just got married on Saturday, and I went to her wedding this weekend. Nice. So she is adopted from Ukraine. Then 2 years later, my cousin David was adopted from Georgia. And then 2 years after him, I was adopted from Georgia. So I was the last of the three, and all of our parents were best friends. And, they all adopted through the same adoption agency. Luckily for me, my aunt and uncles had great experiences with this agency. So that's why my parents decided to adopt from Georgia, because I adore my parents, but I would have to assume that they probably were not Georgian enthusiasts who had this idea, we're going to adopt a baby from Georgia. They tried everything. They obviously tried to conceive naturally. They tried in vitro. They went through a surrogate. They explored domestic adoption. Nothing was really working out. And they said they were going to try to have a family until they were 40. And then once they turned 40, they were just going to accept that it was going to be the two of them. And then when they were 40,
surprise.
They got news from the adoption agency that a baby was born in Georgia, and that the parents really wanted her to go to an American family and have a better life in the U.S. And that was the story, that this family already had 3 children. They couldn't afford to have another. They decided to put me up for adoption. My parents adopted me, and that was going to be that. And because of the way that my parents raised me with this story, I always thought of it as such a selfless decision, like how amazing they saw what they could provide and decided for me to have more. And so I think just knowing that, I never felt any of these sort of stereotypical emotions of abandonment or what's wrong with me. I always felt chosen. I always felt like, wow, my birth family, they must be these incredible people. Like, I don't know if I could make such a decision. And I also, at the same time, was feeling this immense gratitude for my parents, that they wanted to be parents so badly, that they tried for so long. They got married when they were 25 and didn't get to have a child until they were 40. And so I think because of that, that's also probably also part of why they did it so right. They did such an amazing job. They were beyond ready to be parents. They were literally dying to be parents. And they came to Georgia to adopt me. While they were in Georgia, they were told that it had become illegal that week that they were there to adopt any children outside of the country unless they had a birth defect, in which case it would be legal. But it was an effort by President Shevardnadze's wife, the first lady, to preserve the population. As my parents were told that the population it kept dropping. It was getting so low. They needed to keep the children within Georgia. So adoption was still illegal, but it had to be within Georgia. Meanwhile, my parents had just gone through hell, basically, this whole fertility journey. They finally arrived to Georgia after the trip had been pushed back 6 months, because they were supposed to get me when I was pretty much, freshly born. And then it had been pushed back, and they were going to get me when I was 6 months old. So then they arrive in Georgia. They hear this news that it's now illegal. And the adoption agency essentially not dropped them, but told them, okay, we're going to have to rearrange a few things. There is now a diplomat in Georgia who's going to be working with you to make this legal. And the diplomat, his name is Amaran. Amaran led my parents around Georgia. They found a way to somehow make it work. And the way that my parents described it to me was that the reason it became legal was because I was born with a red birthmark on my face called a hemangioma.
And I'm glad you've recovered from that, by the way. I don't know.
Thank you so much. Yes. I've lived to tell the tale. But I was born with this birthmark that they, through the paperwork, played up to be somewhat of a birth defect.
There you go.
And I went home with my parents, and that was that. And we heard from Amaran on and off for the first 10 years of my life, and then never again.
Interesting. So he was something like what, maybe a lobbyist or a government relations person might do here. Didn't sound like it was, like sort of a corrupt process. It just sounds like he was using the system.
Well, it is weird, right? Because diplomats have nothing to do with adoptions. So I don't know what was going on there.
Well, it's all about leverage and power, and it sounds like Amaran was using it in a good way in that instance. So that's a good thing.
Right.
So that's your story. So
genuinely, I believe he's, yeah.
Yeah. So that's your
my parents out.
And so you knew that story growing up, but what happens that causes you to connect with your parents in Georgia? I know it is actually a wonderful, heartwarming story or portrayal of this on TikTok.
Thank you.
And go ahead and tell our listeners how they can follow you on TikTok.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So my TikTok is just at Ezra Freeman, EzraFreeman. And I go in depth about my Georgian American journey on TikTok. And it's just led me to the best opportunities. It's completely changed my life. I'm blessed that I'm a full-time content creator. So I get to basically continue to let this story unfold. And, it's kind of like my personal development, but I get to share it. And through the storytelling on TikTok, it's just opened so many incredible doors and continues to, like this one.
Well, that's what I like about sort of your journey, which is, obviously in some ways just beginning, although it's the furthest along it's been for you so far. Every day is. And not to compare you to me, but I got this little messy brand of lawyer and comedian and podcast host and, philanthropy that I have where I run for charity, and none of them seem to connect, but they all connect because they're all me. You are an influencer, you are a brand ambassador, you are an actress, both on stage and in reality shows and on TV, and none of those. And then, of course, you have your adoption story, which isn't a brand at all, but yet it is for you. So how does it all fit together in this beautiful package that is Ezra Freeman?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I've been so lucky. I was thinking about this earlier today, so I'm so happy you phrased it that way, because the way that it's all connecting just in the last month has been mind-blowing. Like, I never would have expected there to be so many sort of business opportunities in the Georgian American niche that I'm kind of in. But even just today, actually, I just got a PR package from Penguin Random House Publishing, which is obviously a huge publishing house.
Sure.
And there's a novel that's coming out. They just sent me an advanced copy that's all about connecting with your Georgian roots.
Oh, gosh. Somebody wrote your story? What's up with that?
Somebody wrote their story. They were raised in England by Georgian parents who fought in the war. And I mean, I haven't read the book yet, but it sounds like it's their story. But it's just that's crazy to me that I now get to work with this publishing house and monetize on it while still diving deeper into my culture. It's completely ideal. But okay, this is a good question and answer for also how I ended up connecting with my birth family. So
thanks for hanging in there on that one, by the way.
Oh my goodness, my pleasure. My pleasure. Because the way that this is all going to come together, it's going to answer all the questions at once. And then unlock some more, which is perfect. But right out of college, I went to Elon University in North Carolina, and I studied acting and double majored with arts administration and minored in business. So I was kind of like thinking I would maybe go the Broadway route, but also kind of giving myself the backup of if I ever wanted to open a theater, which is completely not what I am doing now, nor what I'm pursuing. And I have no intentions to do any of those things, but I am thrilled with where I'm at. So I studied all of those things, which are actually way closer to what I'm doing now. And then I graduated, moved to New York City, was auditioning, and wound up with an audition to be a character actress on Princess Cruises, which sounded perfect for me because in New York, I was working 3 part-time jobs. I was working in a restaurant, retail, and also in a gym for the free membership, the free food, and the discount on clothing, and also interning at an acting studio for discounted classes and discounted studio time. So I was really, really hustling.
Which is, I mean, you've just described a pretty typical New York actress slash wannabe actress's experience, right?
Completely. Yeah. This is what everybody does when they move here. So you just kind of push through, and it's really easy to get lost in that grind and kind of forget what you're really working for when you're literally just working and doing all these things that you don't really want to do. Because I moved to New York to act and audition. And when you're working that many jobs to survive, you really don't have a lot of time to audition.
Yeah.
And I was not in the union. So even the auditions that I was able to go to, I was like last on the list, So it's so ironic. I ended up doing a video audition for this character with Princess Cruises. I got it.
What was the character? Do you remember?
Yeah. Oh, remember? I still do it from time to time. The character's names are Fortuna Luck and also like an evil pirate queen, Joan Brewer. So it really is like Princess Cruises' version of Disney characters.
Okay.
And with the characters, there's a lot of flexibility. You can make it your own. You can sing. You host game shows. It's hosting really, and improv.
Okay.
And I was thrilled. I had never, not to say I'd never really traveled, but my family, we traveled, but I was exactly as busy as I am as an adult. I was this busy as a kid. So summers were a little tricky because I would always be doing a million community theater shows, volunteering with some organization, just doing everything. And I'm so grateful that I did. But because of that, some of the family vacations that my parents probably wanted to do, sure. I was like, no, I would rather, be a supporting role in this random community theater show than go to Italy for a week.
Right. I've always wanted to play a page in Once Upon a Mattress, so I'm going to do that.
100%. So yeah. And they were cool with that because they are the best parents ever. So then, when I got the job with Princess, I also did not study abroad in college, even though Elon University, it's huge on study abroad. But I didn't study abroad because I was double majoring, minoring, and taking like 27 credits a semester because I was also trying to be a TA for as many classes as I could. And I was just, sometimes I'm like, I don't know how I did it, but then I think of what I'm doing now and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be saying the same thing about this. It's just, I'm not going to get a degree at the end of this. I'm going to get satisfaction.
Yeah. Maybe not one you hang on a wall, but some sort of successful recognition.
Right. And in a much more fulfilling way, I must say, like I'm genuinely as happy as I hope that I seem, because I am really, right now, I'm in such a place in life where I'm just so grateful and amazed. Every day, I'm like amazed at how it all comes together. So I wound up with this job with Princess. I felt like I won the lottery, and it was, not to say just a character actor position, but I had no idea how far it was all going to go.
Sure.
So I finished my first contract. I was feeling great. I was like, wow, I cannot believe this. I'm getting paid to travel and I'm also acting and I don't have to pay for food or housing. I'm saving so much money. And I just had the idea that I would probably do a few character actors contracts before I moved back to New York and then could really focus on my Broadway goals.
Sure.
And then I finished my first contract. I had the offer to go back to sea. I took it and I joined my second contract on March 6th, 2020.
That's good timing.
Great timing for a cruise ship. Absolutely. Then on March 9th, Princess Cruises announced a pause in operations due to COVID. And the ship that I was on was just sailing to the Bahamas. So we were just off the coast of Florida. So I figured, okay, this sucks. I'm American. I was so excited for this contract, but they're probably just going to disembark me in Florida. And then I'm going to be home for the 30 days until I come back to work.
Sure.
And I was so disappointed. I'm like, no, I was so ready for this. I just want to keep sailing. Yeah. And I thought it was just going to be 30 days. Well, all of the passengers disembarked and they said to us crew, just hang tight. We don't know what the plan is, but in the meantime, you guys all have free reign of the ship. And, we're going to make the best of this because we don't know how long we're going to be here. So it wound up being about a month before we got any news. And
a month?
It was absolutely amazing. I mean, I was just to jump ahead a bit, we were there for 67 days.
Wow.
But a month in, it was incredible because on the particular ship that I was on Sky Princess, which at the time was the newest ship in the fleet. So it was the best. Everything was spotless. It had barely been touched by passengers. Princess Cruises is truly remarkable. They moved every single crew member to a balcony cabin. So crew who were used to, being room stewards and living on deck 3 with no windows and with several roommates, suddenly everyone had their own balcony.
Wow. So there's like 1,000 people on the boat ship?
Yeah, there were 1,200 of us.
And who's taking care of who? Obviously, you weren't doing any performances for anyone, I wouldn't assume. But who was?
Everything was volunteer.
Yeah.
So, and everybody stepped up. So I was actually, I was performing during the day, just doing shows for the crew.
That's so cool.
All the cooks were rotating because cruises keep a ton of food on board. Because of how much all the passengers eat. So we had the best of the best. Like we were living large.
That's cool.
And
who was doing the towel animals? Was anybody doing the towel animals?
Yeah, the room stewards were still going at it. I mean, It was amazing. Like it was truly wonderful. And luckily for me, this was a time when TikTok just came out. Like it was just popping off and just getting big.
So everybody was stuck at home to watch TikTok.
Absolutely. So meanwhile, everyone's stuck at home. I started posting and I'll never forget because all my friends on board were like, oh, you should really get a TikTok. Like you have the personality for it. And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll dabble. It took me like 2 weeks of being in my friends' TikToks to be like, yeah, maybe I'll do this. My first viral video was I was saying that, it was like when you're stuck on a cruise ship for supposedly 40 days and 40 nights and there's 50 languages spoken on board and you feel like you're on Noah's Ark. And that video went super viral and changed my entire life. So then I kept posting about just what our experience was being stuck at sea because the news was portraying all of these cruise lines to be like villains and saying, oh, they're treating their employees horribly. They're not getting any information and it's the worst place to be. And then I started posting and I'm like, actually, I feel a lot safer here. No one is joining the ship. No one is leaving.
Right.
We're actually having a great time. And I would prefer to wait out, quote unquote, wait out the pandemic here.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool because, I mean, obviously, knowing about you and knowing you and talking to you now, it's clear that part of you is always seeing the positive in everything. And at a time where everybody was complaining about everything, and to some extent, rightfully so, the world felt like it was falling apart because it seemed like it was falling apart. And you found the positive in it, posted a little something for whatever reason, and have been reaping the benefits of that attitude ever since.
That's such a good way to look at it. Yeah, absolutely. And it did wonders because it gave me a platform, but also got me recognized by Princess Cruises head office.
Oh, I bet.
PR. Like for PR reasons, they were like, oh, hallelujah, thank you.
Yeah, let's find this. Who is this person? What room is she in?
Right. So that was that. And then eventually after 67 days, we got to go home. They divided us up based on our home countries, and they transshipped us to different ships that way via ferry boats. And so then I moved to a ship that was just North Americans. And it was not only Princess Cruises, it was also people from Holland America and Carnival. And like, it was a crazy, crazy experience. And so then when we were on our ferries, we sailed to the US border until the CDC gave us clearance to enter. And then they flew us home via 4 private jets.
Wow.
They went to 4 different locations. And then we had to sign a contract saying that we were going to be picked up and that we were not going to stop anywhere. And then we were going to quarantine for 2 weeks once we got home.
So this is like May 2020? May, June?
Yeah, I got home on Mother's Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So home at that point is Maryland, right? You were in Maryland? Okay.
Yeah. I was in Maryland.
That's amazing. So Princess is starting to recognize who you are. So how does the Georgian seed get planted along this time period?
Okay. So on cruise ships, there's barely any Americans. And I was one of like 10 American crew members. But it's a lot of like Serbians and Eastern Europeans, and of course, a lot of Filipinos and all that. But I had a lot of friends who were Serbian and like Macedonian who were always like, oh, you're a Georgian girl. Like, you should really look into this. And that's kind of when the seed originally got planted. I had friends from this part of the world who were inviting me to go there, who were saying, oh, let's go to Georgia together. And then we can visit Serbia. We can visit Hungary. We can go to Ukraine. And I'm like, oh, that would be cool. What a good way to do it. So the wheels started spinning in my head that way. Mm-hmm. And at this point, you know, when I started working on ships, it was 2019, which is, it's wild. That wasn't even that long ago. And that's when the wheels started spinning, because growing up, I knew I was Georgian and I was always proud to be Georgian, but I felt so fulfilled with my life. I was like not feeling any sort of need to really look into it or anything. And also what I should really mention is in 2018, during that 8-month period when I was in New York auditioning and working all these jobs, my parents gave me 23andMe as a Christmas gift. And I did 23andMe mainly to see if I was like a genetic carrier for any sort of diseases, because I figured, oh, it might be good to know my medical history.
Yeah, what about that horrible red thing on your face? Was that something you can transmit to your children?
Right. So that thing, it's so hilarious. It actually apparently fell off of my face on the plane ride when I was 6 months old from Georgia to the U.S.
Maybe that diplomat just sort of got you a little temporary tattoo or something.
Right. Could be. So the diplomat is about to re-enter the story.
Okay.
So I did 23andMe. I didn't come up as a carrier for anything.
Congratulations.
And well, thank you. Very good news. And I didn't have any relatives really pop up other than like a sixth cousin, which, you know, it's like nothing. But it did say I am 100% Georgian. So I was like, yep, that pretty much confirms that. And no new information. Solid. So at the time, I asked my mom to reach out to the diplomat because she figured she could probably just ask him. And I was like, yeah, why don't you just like see what he has to say? If, you know, if anyone in my birth family is unhealthy or anything, because I think I must have been going through like a bit of a paranoid health phase. That seems very like me. So
also seems really like all of us coming out of the pandemic.
Well, this was right before the pandemic.
Oh, okay. We're in 2018.
2019.
Yes.
Yeah. 2018, 2019.
You had a prophecy.
Yeah, I must have. Honestly, though, it's even, I'm like getting chills now thinking about it. The fact that I did this right, like the year before the ships and everything, it's just amazing. So I did 23andMe. My mom reaches out to the diplomat on LinkedIn. He sends her a reply that says, interesting that you are inquiring. She has 3 older siblings. 2 of them are twins, and they still live with her birth parents in Western Georgia, and they do not want to be contacted. And I quote, this is very ominous. He goes, if you continue to look into it, traumatic information will be revealed for all parties involved.
Oh, wow.
And my mom and I are like, honestly, my optimism, it's 100% my mom. She was like, I'm sure it's a translation issue. How bad could it be?
I was wondering whether that might have been a language issue, like maybe traumatic meant interesting.
Right, exactly. So my mom was like, I'm sure it's nothing. And I'm like, you're right, Mom. I'm sure it's nothing. Yeah. But like for me, I have a very vivid memory of sitting on the couch with my best friend and my mom telling me this and having this, like, as they say, come to Jesus moment of being like, these are real people on the other side of the world who know that I exist and I know nothing about them and they know nothing about me other than they gave birth to me and they don't have any other details. And this diplomat like knows them and knows me. And it just felt like, like the magnitude of the whole situation didn't ever really hit me until that moment, especially hearing that they all still live together. I mean, now that I'm familiar with Georgian culture, it's not unusual at all for adults to live with their parents. But I was like, wow, they must be a close family. I mean, how interesting, because I'm so close with my parents. And my mom and I just kind of assumed that if there was any traumatic information, it was probably that my siblings did not know that they had another sister and that the family was close. And, you know, it's just, it's dirty laundry that didn't need to be aired out.
Yeah.
Certainly not by me. So then from then on, my thought was, okay, it's not really my business if I want to know them or not, because the decisions have been made. Like, I'm not in their life. I love my life. They're not in mine. And if it's ever going to happen, it's going to be a series of miracles, and it's just going to be clear that it was meant to happen.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. So that was kind of my stance with the whole thing. Then fast forward to cruise ships and getting quarantined at sea. And then I get home, and then I meet this Turkish guy who we wound up dating. And so my boyfriend was from Turkey, and his father did a lot of work in Georgia and happened to speak and read Georgian, which is just wild. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm no longer in this relationship, but I can see exactly why, like, I can see why this man was in my life. Like, he was the perfect person to support me through this whole thing. So my ex-boyfriend was getting his PhD and wanted to do a project on international adoptions into the U.S. from post-Soviet countries.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, of course, it was because of me. And he wanted to see.
Which is a great pickup line, by the way. Did he use that as his first pickup line on you?
Oh, that would have been amazing. I would have been like, wow.
That's incredible.
Speaking my language. Also, I should mention, during this relationship, I decided to learn how to speak Turkish.
Right.
So, yeah, because of him, I was like, well, it's a pandemic. I don't got much going on. I'll just learn to speak Turkish. You're here, you speak Turkish. And, but that's significant only because now that I'm learning how to speak Georgian, the fact that I was in the practice of learning a language, it's just been night and day. Like, it's just been amazing. But okay, so he's doing this project. He looks at my adoption paperwork. In Georgian, it has my birth family's names and their address, which I never cared. I mean, not to say I never cared, but it wasn't a priority for me to look through this paperwork at any time.
Right.
And I always knew that my birth parents' names were Irma and Gia, and that they were from Georgia. That's what I knew. I knew their names, but only because it was a very significant thing in my family, my American family, because my grandmother's name is Irma Georgiana.
Oh, wow.
So it has Irma, Georgia, and Gia all in it.
Yeah.
So my family, we were always like, it was meant to be.
Right,
like, obviously, I'm meant to be yours. And it really was. So that was that. And he's looking and he's like, yeah, they live in Zugdidi, Georgia. Like, I'm sure I could find them right away. And I said, oh, no. I have been told this is going to be traumatizing, and that is enough for me. I do not want to be traumatized. But if you want to look, you can. Just don't show me if you think you found anything. And he was like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to look. So then he found this family on Facebook within like 20 minutes that he thought was my family. And I was like, no, I don't want to see, like, you have no proof. How could it be? How could you have found them on 20 minutes? Like, I'm 25. If they were just there to be found, I would have found them. And he was like, you've never even looked. So, right. Then I was like, no, I don't want to see . Then by the end of the night, I was like, you know what? Just show me. Like, I was curious, obviously. And I'm like, just show me. Wine might've been involved. And then, I saw them, and it was the weirdest thing. So, the story that I had been told my whole life was that these people were, you know, very poor and that they couldn't afford another kid. The people that I was looking at were posting like Chanel and didn't really look like this image that I had in my head of what I thought this family might have looked like. And the first people that he showed me were my sisters, who are twins. And I'm looking at their photos and I'm like, I don't know, this isn't adding up. Like, they don't look like twins to me. And he's like, are you crazy? They look exactly like each other. And I'm like, no, I don't know. I don't think they're twins. So I don't think this is them. Then he shows me the dad. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't really see any resemblance to him. Like, I don't think this is it. Then he shows me the mom. And I was like, okay, I look a lot like her. But it doesn't feel like this is the family. And then he shows me the brother. And my brother and I look exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like exactly the same. And I just remember him like showing me this photo and
crazy.
being like, it was like an out of body experience, and like just staring at this picture of someone and realizing, oh my God, this is like definitely them.
Yeah. Same DNA and everything.
Yeah. And like a moment that I really never would have thought it was right there. Like that they were right there to be found. And so, but I was still saying to my boyfriend out loud, I'm like, no, I don't think this is them. But like, I know. And I like now knowing what I know, I was like, this is them. And it led to like 2 weeks of me just like obsessively stalking all their social media.
Oh, I bet.
And yeah. And I wasn't reaching out, but I remember having this desire that they were going to notice that there was this like American girl viewing their stories and that they were going to reach out, because in my heart, I was like, I don't want to cause any like drama or trauma. And I always knew that once I opened that door, I could never close it.
Yeah. It's interesting because you were never seeking it and didn't even know you needed it. Maybe you didn't need it, but it does sound like it was speaking to, I don't want to say a hole, but something inside of you that it was filling.
Absolutely. And but I still like at this point didn't really feel ready to reach out because I didn't have any details, and it was just wild. So and I mean, I remembered the emotional reaction I had when I did 23andMe a few years earlier, excuse me. And I was like, I don't know. I just feel like this is going to make me really emotional. And then what if I reach out and it's not them? Then is it going to set me on a path of like trying to find them, which is something I never really felt like I needed to do. And I didn't know what to do. And I hadn't told my parents yet at this point.
So what did you do?
Then I went on a family vacation with my entire mom's side of the family. And this is about 2 weeks into me stalking the Georgians.
Right.
And I asked to go on a walk with my aunts, my mom's sisters, because I was going to suss it out with them.
These are the ones that adopted David and Alexa?
No, so those are actually family friends. But your memory with the names is incredible.
Well, thank you.
Wow. Oh, my gosh. That's incredible. But my mom's sisters. And I pulled out a photo of my brother and I said, I want to talk to you guys about something. And they saw that picture and they were like, you found your family in Georgia. Like, this has to be your brother. This looks exactly like you. And I started crying immediately. I was like, I think I did. Like, but I haven't said anything. And like my ex found them and I don't know what to do. And they were so just amazing. They were like, your parents are going to be so happy, whatever you decide to do. And just know that like, this is incredible. This is a miracle. And I was like, I just need to release it. I'm very religious. And I was like, I just need to release it to God. Like, I still don't have a clear direction on if I'm supposed to reach out to them or not. Like, I need this to be a God thing and not a me thing. And, so that was that. And 1 week later, I got a message on 23andMe from my biological second cousin living in Milan, Italy, saying, hi, I see that, we're second cousins. By any chance, do you know anything about your relation to Georgia? Because I see that you're in the US. I'm Georgian, but I live in Milan. 23andMe doesn't deliver to Georgia. So I just did this DNA kit as like a funny COVID thing with my friends. And I can't believe you're here. Were you born in 1996? Which I was. And then I was like, oh, okay. I hear you. Like, this is supposed to happen. So the first thing I did was I told my parents. They were overjoyed. My mom's like first words were, I guess we're going to Georgia. And then I looked to see if that girl who had messaged me was Facebook friends with the family I had been stalking. And she was. And that is when I knew for sure the biological link with her and then that family. And then it's just been this incredible journey of then, slowly getting to know them. And then I went back. So this happened during COVID when sailing wasn't a thing. This happened 2 weeks before Princess had received clearance to sail again, and I was supposed to go back to work for 6 months. So I was like, wow, okay, this is happening, and I'm leaving, and I'm going back to work, and I'm going to be away from my parents, and we're also possibly planning a trip to Georgia. So I decided to go back to the ship. Literally, when I got on the plane to return to sea, I had FaceTime my siblings before I left, but they hadn't told my birth mother yet.
Oh, wow.
And they were waiting until everyone was together. And then my siblings got COVID and decided to quarantine at our birth parents' house because they were visiting the capital city. They decided to quarantine. And that happened the day that I was joining the cruise ship again. And we all had a mandatory 2-week quarantine.
Crazy. So you had some time.
Yes, we had nothing but time.
So I got to ask you a couple rapid fire questions on this, because then I want to get to the Real Love Boat. But so Ambassador dude and the so-called trauma, was there something there, or was he just making trouble?
I think he just thought like that. How do I say? I think he thought that there would be like some bad blood,
I got you.
maybe, but there wasn't. It's been incredible. And honestly, my family, like, we really don't dwell. We don't dwell on the beginning at all.
And everybody knew about you, so there was no like aha moments for anybody that didn't know you existed or anything.
Right.
That's
exactly.
Wild. Wow.
My siblings actually grew up looking for me. And, you know, not to get too much into the dark side of that, but there was some regret.
Oh, sure.
On a huge level on my birth parents' side very quickly after I was born. But from what I understand, papers had been signed like leading up to the birth. So I think that, you know, that was the trauma. I think my birth family experienced a lot of trauma in that whole situation. It ended up being a lot harder on my biological mother to give birth and then, you know, separate from the baby than she had probably thought before it really happened. And at some point she tasked my siblings with quote unquote finding me, and they never thought that I was outside of Georgia. They always thought I was there. So for them to hear that I was in the US and that I was thriving and that I was an influencer and working on cruise ships, they were like, what? Yeah.
Well, that makes sense, because I mean, it was illegal at the time, so they wouldn't have thought you would have left the country. So this is a decent segue. And then again, at Ezra Freeman is a great place to see your family, both parts of your family, your complete family, and see you doing some Georgian dancing and a lot of fun stuff that grows. But your fame is rising at the same time all this is happening. And fast forward ahead to The Real Love Boat, which is, I guess, in some ways a sequel or an homage to the original Love Boat that old people like me grew up with. But it combines the everything beautiful and cheesy about the show The Love Boat with a reality show, because that's what it is. So tell everybody about it and what your role has been in it.
Totally. So that also happened really quickly and randomly and just divine timing. So when I went back to that contract, you know, the contract after COVID, that's when my TikTok really took off. And I gained about 70,000 followers. And my content was 100% about cruise ship crew life. It was nothing about my family at all, because I didn't know anything yet. All I knew was people were interested in cruising. I was living on a ship. It was taking off. And then CBS announced that they were bringing back the Love Boat. And I was like, oh, this has to be me. Like, I need to be involved. So I made a TikTok manifesting saying, this show is my destiny. Then I get a call from CBS, or I get a call saying, hi, Ezra, this is Destiny calling from CBS. That was literally her name. Mm-hmm. And she was like, we saw your TikTok. We think you're amazing. We would love to like go through this audition process with you for The Real Love Boat. And I'm like, yes, that's incredible. So after this contract, though, when my TikTok was taking off, at the same time that this Love Boat thing is happening, Princess is like, we love your TikToks. We want to bring you on board just to create content, not do any of the character acting stuff. You wouldn't be in entertainment. You'd be sailing as a guest, technically, but creating content full time. It was like a dream. Everything is paid for on these influencer contracts. And it's a different bracket.
Sure.
And it's working more so with the corporate office, but as kind of a VIP. And so I did that for 1 month. And then I said, okay, this is amazing, but I need to kind of take care of some life stuff and I need to go to Georgia. Princess Cruises, literally best company ever. They said, okay, well, we still want more content. So what if we send you and your parents on an 18-day transatlantic cruise? That way you guys don't have to fly across the ocean. You can sail. You can work it as an influencer. They can get a free vacation. Said, great idea. So we did that. Then we sailed to Iceland, Ireland, Scotland, and England and disembarked in England. We were there for 5 days. While we were on that transatlantic cruise, CBS called me again. They said, we're really heavily considering you. Would you possibly be able to go in the next month if we push up production? I said, possibly. I'm planning on going to Georgia, but yeah, I can be available. And me being me and being delusional, but it's always worked out for me. I packed for this trip as if I wasn't going to be home for months. Because I was like, I know I'm going to this transatlantic cruise and then London with my parents, and then we're all going to Georgia. I guess I could also be filming The Real Love Boat. Who knows? But it was still up in the air.
Yeah, in fairness, I have 4 girls, and they all pack as if they're not going to be home for a couple months. So I'm not sure if that's all that extraordinary.
Yes, that is amazing. But yeah, so, and also I have to give so much credit to my dad because going into this cruise, I actually did require a little bit more like, I needed to be talked into packing for it all. My dad was like, he was like, there is no way that you are not going to be on The Real Love Boat. He was like, I expect that we are going to be in Georgia longer than you. We're going to arrive, you're going to get cast, and then we're going to stay and you're going to leave. And I was like, Dad, you're crazy. Then, so then we go to Georgia. We have this absolutely euphoric, best experience of my life reunion of like my Georgian parents embracing my American parents, my siblings treating me like we had never been apart. Mind you, they don't speak English at all. And we at the time did not speak Georgian. And it was just 10 days of complete euphoria. And I didn't know when I was leaving. So it was magical. There's a million videos of it online. It was on the Georgian news. It's a thing. And then we traveled to the village where my family actually lives. And the first night that we were there were 60 neighbors there to greet us, literally kissing my parents, like just treating them like kings and queens. And it's just crazy how the community came out to support. I had never experienced anything like that. And that night, as we were all standing around, raising a toast to the fact that I'd come back, to where I would have been raised, in a house that I would have been raised, I said a prayer, and this was publicly in front of everyone. And I said, I feel like it's my destiny to like connect with my roots. And if God blesses me with some huge opportunity, I know that it's because I'm supposed to bring visibility and like help the village and help the people of Georgia. And 20 minutes later, I got the call that I was cast on The Real Love Boat.
Wow.
And I mean, I've always been religious, but how could your faith like not be strengthened with these last 2 years that I've had? Yeah. Like, it was very like, okay, we got a deal. I'm all in. So then I left 5 days later to film The Real Love Boat. My American parents stayed in Georgia with my birth family.
Oh, that is amazing.
Because they love it. They love Georgia. My mom is like trying to learn to speak Georgian, but bless her heart, she is like, she's struggling. But she eats Georgian food. She's learning Georgian dance too. She's such a good sport. My dad absolutely loved it. They love all my relatives, but they really love my brother. Like, he's their own. Yeah,
well, he looks just like you, right?
Yeah, I think that's honestly like, that's what I said to my mom. I was like, you probably just like associate us as the same human.
That's funny.
But they really love him. We're trying to find a way for him to move here. because my parents are just like, we miss him. We need him all the time.
That's amazing. And I hate to do this. Gosh, I feel like we should have 2 hours of this. I wanted to talk to you about The Real Love Boat. Everything else has been, no disrespect to that, so much more interesting. But
thank you.
But give us some anecdotes about life on a reality show.
Filming?
Yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, filming the show, it happened at such an interesting time in my life where I was already so like running on pure adrenaline. Like I literally flew to meet all of these CBS people from a village where there was no running water.
Right.
And so I was like, what is my life? Filming The Real Love Boat, like I honestly felt like I was at home because we filmed it on a princess ship. And I played a bartender on the show. Of course, I'm not a bartender, but the whole reality TV aspect, I was really curious going in because I love reality TV. If it was going to be scripted, like how much was going to be real, how much was fake.
Sure.
It was actually like all real. The only thing that's fake is the situations that they put you in. It's like, okay, there's nothing real about getting to know someone with 6 cameras surrounding you. Yeah. And I think the problem that we had on the show was the people that they cast were just really nice people.
That's annoying.
Yeah, for reality TV, it actually kind of was. Like, they
need some strong personalities.
Yeah, nobody wanted to step on each other's toes. And so what we ended up with was a very polished, very nice, professional sort of show.
It's like a bunch of Midwesterners in a reality show. It's just too darn polite.
Much too darn polite. Seriously, and they put a lot of Canadians in there who, of course, was so nice. Yeah. But you know, it did wonderful things for me as far as like networking for my career. And I'd kind of gotten away from acting at this point, and it's wild that it brought me back. Like I spent all my life training to be an actress, and then my opportunity to be on CBS came from cruise ships.
That is too crazy.
And TikTok.
I love it.
Now I have that connection. Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. And I met like one of my absolute best friends was one of the contestants on the show, and working with Jerry O'Connell and Rebecca Romaine was amazing. They are now mentors. And the press tour was incredible because I got to be interviewed on Inside Edition and The Talk. And that is what led me to my new dream, which now my dream job is to be a talk show host. Like I would love to be the host of something like The Talk or the Drew Barrymore show. And I want my,
I think your name has to be Drew Barrymore though, to be the host of that.
Right. But I've got a pretty memorable name.
You do.
I could see the Ezra show.
Oh, that makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see you doing that. You would be 100% great at that. I love that you love your acting, but you also, you just take everything as it comes. And there's an old expression, I'm sure you've heard it before. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And, and I think your life is a good example that you couldn't have scripted this out. But it does sound like you've shared your dreams along the way. And it sounds like God has answered them in a big way.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. I mean, I just found so much joy in doing all the interviews about The Real Love Boat that I was like, wait a second, like this is what I'm actually good at. And then now, I mean, not to say I'm not a talented actress. I'm sure I'm fine. There's people that are better, but nobody, like with the way that my life has played out, I have such a blended point of view of like everything. And I just feel like there's always going to be people who can act better, play characters better, but nobody is going to be able to tell this life story, live this, like this life was not given to me for me to pretend to be someone else.
And I love
this
that.
Life was given to me for me to speak about the issues that have affected my life and hopefully help people.
Oh, and just your life itself. I mean, I do comedy and you do all the things you do. And the common denominator in all of them, including everything that everyone does, accountants, lawyers, and bankers, is authenticity. You're only going to be good at something if you're authentic. And maybe that's the answer to the question I asked earlier. What's the common denominator in all of your crazy things that you do. And it's authenticity. It's all authentically you, and you represent it all so beautifully. I can't wait to see all the great things that you do in the years to come. Hopefully you'll come back on and keep us updated.
I would love that. Thank you so much. It's always cathartic for me to like kind of tell this story. And I always find new parallels that just blow my mind even more. And I know there were a few today that I was like, wow, I never realized how perfectly even that played out. So thank you so much. This has been amazing.
It's been my pleasure. You're you're so much energy, so much really positive energy. So it's great to spend an hour with you. I look forward to doing it again sometime. Well, that was great. My gosh, she was just a bundle of energy. And I know you couldn't see her, but so enthusiastic. You definitely need to check her out at Ezra Freeman. And I think, she's perhaps the youngest guest we've had on the show so far, but she represents something that everyone's having to discover. And young people and younger people are doing it better than any of us. And that is just using their sphere of influence through social media and otherwise in just a new and powerful way that resonates with other people, that entertains and informs. And sure, it's capable of being monetized, but it's also engaging and entertaining and organic. Not everyone does it that way. There's this notion of being famous for being famous. And certainly, you could say that about her narrative, but I don't see it that way. I think she's famous because people like who she is and what she represents. And that's something rare, in this era of social media representing all your best things, all your best moments. And people get to go through the highs and the lows with her in a really genuine, authentic, and unguarded and vulnerable way. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I really enjoyed talking to her. I hope you'll share her interview with other people. I hope you'll subscribe to my First Rodeo podcast if you have not already. I hope you'll check out the Freed to Run at www.freedtorun.com and help us provide shelter for elders for the indigent homeless community. And I hope you'll come back and listen to the next episode of My First Rodeo. My first rodeo.